Greetings, Star Citizens, and welcome to another beautiful day in the verse. And today we take a look at the Mustang Delta. So I've already done a quantum test drive for the Mustang in the past. However, that was the standard Mustang Alpha, and the Mustang Delta really is an entirely different ship. It's got an extra engine, it's got a ton more firepower, and because of that extra engine, it's got a ton more agility, speed, acceleration, and everything that makes a dogfighter a dogfighter. Now, currently, the Mustang Delta is in competition with the Aegis Sabre for the Galactic Tour's Dogfighter of the Year. I don't think that's necessarily a very fair comparison to compare such a big, heavy, and pretty much a crowd favorite fighter compared to a dogfighter. But the comparison isn't as silly as it may seem. So when I first saw it, I thought that is absolutely ridiculous. There's absolutely no way a Delta stands up to a Sabre, which is still true. In a head-on-head fight, the Sabre's most likely going to win. However, it isn't just a generalized ship of the year. It's not just a case of which ship is better, it's a case of which is the better dogfighter. And when we talk dogfighting, in my opinion, the Aegis Sabre isn't a dogfighter, and it's not a very good dogfighter. It flies and fights a lot like a Vanguard would fly, in that its role is essentially a boom and zoom. It's essentially planned to get in, do a ton of damage, and get out before you take damage or before you're spotted. And it uses its stealth to fight. It's a stealth fighter, so it's designed to sort of pop in and out of a fight and not necessarily stick around in a fight, not necessarily stay in the fight. And the Mustang Delta doesn't really have the speed or the firepower to be a boom and zoom, so it has to stick around in a fight. Now, that isn't to say it can take a beating. It is still extremely fragile. It's not as fragile as the Mustang Alpha, but it is still gonna die extremely quickly if it's hit. But it's got agility and it's got an extremely short turning curve. So in terms of dogfighting, one of the biggest things you're gonna need is agility. Not necessarily firepower, not necessarily top speed. It's more about how quick can that ship turn around, how quick can you get those guns on a ship. And the Mustang Delta has issues because the whole Mustang line at the moment has issues. It is a work in progress, and it is planned to be sort of redone, retweaked and refixed, rebalanced, etc. Because at the moment it is extremely difficult to use effectively because the engines are off center from the center of mass. So if you try to boost or afterburner, you're going to be sort of, as you can see here, you're going to be kind of thrown off aim. It's going to throw your aim off. It's going to be difficult to aim when you're in a dogfight with someone, because typically in a dogfight you're going to be spinning around and boosting and afterburner a lot, and whenever you do that you're going to be putting off your aim. I mean, just turning around puts off your aim because the engines are adjusting to make up for the reverse velocity and essentially swip your velocity around. So it is extremely difficult to fly effectively at the moment. However, we're talking work in progress, and I think once the Mustang Delta is refined and once it tweaks out the engine issues, it's an extremely deadly ship, especially for its budget. So, I mean, on this particular loadout, I've took off the rocket pods, which is essentially what makes the Delta the Delta. It's got the exact same weapons as the other Mustangs, where you've got two size 1s on the front, which is a unmanned turret, and then you've got two size 2s on the wings. It's still got those, but it has an additional two size 2 weapon mounts on the wings, and that is where the rocket pods go. I personally have got rid of those so that I can have 4 Badger repeaters, and on the front for the size 1s I've got 2 distortion cannons, which I ripped off an Avenger. And this loadout, for its size, is extremely deadly. Anyone that knows the distortion cannons know that for a size 1 weapon. They're extremely deadly. They've got the firepower of size 2 weapons, so you shouldn't underestimate them. And you can just see with the Vandal Swarm, I mean, at the moment everyone's flying the Aegis Saber because while they're competing for Dogfighter of the Year, both ships are flyable for free by all backers. So everyone's flying the Saber because it is a crowd favorite. Everyone loves the Saber. So I'm trying to compete with Sabers in doing damage, and a lot of them are getting the kills before me, they're getting the damage in before me, and like I said, the Mustang cannot compete with the Saber's firepower. Obviously the Saber's got 4 size 3s, so there's just no competing with it. It's gonna beat me in damage, but I'm still doing a very good deal to compete with them. I'm still doing a very good deal to do my part and get my kills in. So I think the Mustang Delta, when I first flew the Mustang Delta, I don't remember it having issues with the engines. I remember it being an absolute dream to fly. It was super precise, super agile. The rocket pods used to be super overpowered. They've been greatly nerfed since then. They're nowhere near as deadly now, and I would rather have, like I say, the extra 2 Badger repeaters instead of those rocket pods, because the rocket pods just don't really do any decent damage, especially against small agile fighters like the Vandal. For something like Starfarer or Constellation, the rocket pods, I don't know what just happened there. The rocket pods would be better for some of those bigger ships, but they're just not viable against fighters. They're not viable in a dogfighting situation, which is what this ship is. It clearly is a dogfighter. It's not a brawler, it's not a boom and zoom, and it's definitely not a cargo ship or any of those sort of categories. It is a dogfighter, and it is a very good dogfighter, especially before it was essentially broken. It was an extremely good dogfighter, and it still is. Even now it's not in the same form that it once was. It's still perfectly capable of taking out other fighters in the field. It's still perfectly capable of killing them, and it's still got a very good firepower. It's got 4 size 2s and 2 size 1s, which is still extremely good. And you should never sort of underestimate a Mustang Delta. It's a lot like the Aurora ES, I believe it is, which is the military version of the Aurora. This is very much the same case. It's the military version of the Delta, and it's the one that you should watch out for. But at a first glance, you would see it as just a Delta, just like you would look at an Aurora ES as just an Aurora. Little do you know, they can actually bite back quite hard, and if you sort of underestimate them, especially if you underestimate a Mustang Delta, if you just sort of ignore it thinking, okay, it's just a Mustang, it's not going to do anything, it will absolutely shred through you. So you should never underestimate this ship, because it's one of those, if you turn your back on it, it will easily destroy you. And as you've probably seen in my first my first Mustang quantum test drive, where we did the Mustang Alpha, you could see that it was easily capable of shredding through a Constellation, and that's the Mustang Alpha. That's got less engine, it's got less firepower, it's got less agility, less speed, less everything essentially, but I was still able to essentially take out a Constellation. Now granted, I didn't kill the Constellation, it got away, but if it didn't jump away, I would have killed it. I would have quite easily killed it. It was at the point where all of its parts were falling off, and it was as good as dead. So that's been my quick look at the Mustang Delta. I know I've already done a Mustang video, like I said, but I just wanted to cover this because I do think it is completely different to the Mustang Alpha, or any other Mustang for that matter. It is a completely different class of ship, it's completely different firepower, and it's a whole new machine. It's like an entirely different ship. So my future videos, I'll take a look at the Saber, and I'll sort of talk about how I think these two ships compare, because obviously they are competing against each other for Dogfighter of the Year. and I don't think it's fair to compare them. Like I said at the start, I think they're completely two different ships. I personally don't class the Sabre as a dogfighter. I know it gets used in dogfights, and I know it can be used as a dogfighter, but I would class stealth fighter as a completely different sort of type of dogfighting, because it plays very much like a boom and zoom if you was to play it properly. Obviously, you can't really take damage in a Sabre, and you can't really take damage in a Delta either, but the Delta is a much smaller ship, and it's much more capable of dodging fire, and it's much more agile, and it's much more slippery and harder to catch. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Laters, taters.